Hi there, this is Mrs. Gebhard, and I am going to talk to you guys a little bit about standards-based grading and why I choose to use that in my teaching practices. I will try to make this as quick and painless as possible, so here we go. So, why standards-based grading? Well, first of all, what is standards-based grading? Well, it is a method of assessing students that eliminates points and instead ranks students on a scale of mastery of 0 to 4. So you don't have assignments worth 10 points, 15, 100. This paper is worth 50. This test is worth 75. Everything is based on a standard, and every skill level is ranked 0 through 4. It emphasizes consistent, specific, meaningful feedback and student reflection. So the whole idea behind it is that you are being assessed on your work, getting feedback, and then given the opportunities to improve and build your skills. One thing, however, what standards-based grading is not is grades based on growth. And I think that's a common misconception sometimes. Well, you want to start low so that you can show that you grew by the end of the semester, and that's how you get graded. That's not the case. It takes growth into account. But it is not based on that. So if you get it early on and are rocking it out with 3.5 or a 4, awesome, you get it. You don't have to show that you're improving from there necessarily. So some principles of standards-based grading. The grade reflects skill and ability, not behavior. So one component of this is you don't get graded for your study skills or your work habits. Everything is tied to a standard that I have selected that I feel like is really important in my class for the particular course. And all of the grades go towards those skills. So late work, missing assignments, homework, those things do not get factored into the grade. There are no late points for assignments in my class. It really is based off of your skill. Standards-based grading gives regular, specific, meaningful feedback in order to help students understand their successes and have a clear vision of how to improve. And part of that is that everything's tied to a rubric. And so those rubrics can be found on my websites and on Google Classroom as well. But that every assignment has this sort of target that you want to meet, and you know what that target is. So it's not arbitrary points well, you get an 8 out of 10 on this. If you get a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or 4, you have specific criteria where you fall. So you can look to that and see how you can take it to the next level. Everything assessed is related to a skill with its own rubric. Everything has a purpose. So that's what I was just explaining there. Some more principles of SBG. One, student takes ownership of their grades and their learning. Through regular reflection, students are able to understand their mistakes and select specific areas to target for improvement. So there's more student choice and there's more student control. And I will say, there's never a point where you can say, I can't pass this class, because if you want to and you are trying and you make the effort, even at the very end, there's always hope, there's always a chance. And you can kind of figure out also what you want to focus on based on how you're performing. The grade on a standard is not an average of scores either. It represents a student's current ability. So in this way of grading, you're not penalized for not getting it early on. Like I said, there's always hope for success. So to give you an example, if you're thinking about grades, in a traditional system, maybe these were the 4 papers given throughout a semester: paper 165, paper 270, paper 385, and paper 490. Well, the average of that would be a 77.5, which would be a C+. And when you look at this, does a C reflect the student's current writing for papers abilities by the end of the semester? I would say no. For me, showing that by the end of the semester they were writing at an 85 and a 90, that's a B+ level, not a C+ level. And so that's what this takes into account. There is no perfect way to determine grades in this system. It is a judgment call sometimes, but it really does work in favor of the students the majority of the time. I can kind of show you a few things with this. So here when we talk about on a 4-point scale, now this graphic is not perfect, but it kind of can give you an idea of those different levels. So if you get a 1 for a standard, then it's sort of like you're a novice, you're just starting to learn and don't understand it. A 2 means that you can do it with some help, or looking at an example. A 3 is like, you got this without help. And a 4, this says I can do it on my own and explain how to do it. And I would also say, like, for my courses, it's more about, like, there's a more advanced component to this skill, a deeper level of thought, those types of things when we're talking about an expert. These scores do translate into percentages because I have to work within the system of GPAs in high school. And you can kind of look at it like this, like a 4 is an A plus, a 3 is a B, a 2, that partial mastery is a C minus, and then 1 is like right in that below that F range. I will tell you too, and I can explain this later, the 0 in my book is not a 0. I put that in as a 50%. I've read research on that where like the 0 is way too many far degrees down below an F, and then it skews scores. And I will also say that a 0 is not the same as a missing assignment. A 0 means a student attempted it and has no understanding of it whatsoever, or is completely incorrect. So a 0 means like you got to retake, and I do force a retake on those 0s and 1s, but that like it's not a missing assignment. You don't get a 0 for a missing assignment. Here's a sample rubric just to kind of show you what I'm talking about. So this rubric, and I've done some revisions to my rubrics that they can apply to a lot of different assignments. So you'll probably, for different assignments, you'll have like 2 or 3 rubrics attached, but you can look at this ahead of time and see what I'm going to be looking for. So for the skill of innovative thinking, if you're at a 1, which is your basic level, I rely on cliche and repeat others' ideas. I focus on the obvious or expected. But as you're progressing, like the target for this skill is I offer some new ideas and think outside the box at times. I put my personal stamp on my work, right? So there you are hitting that target. And then that more advanced, my ideas are fresh. I present ideas in unique, interesting ways. So you can kind of see that progression. And I do also give the 0.5. So if you're falling somewhere in between, I do that as well. In Infinite Campus, it's going to be a little tricky for you if it's something that, when it's something that you're not used to. So this is sort of how you'll see it. It'll look similar to this in Infinite Campus. You will only see, 8 to 10 grades total ever in Infinite Campus. And they will all be reflective of your current score for that standard. And sometimes you won't have a score for a standard yet. But I do have to give you a percentage grade. So in the end of it all, your overall grade is the average of each overall standard. And these standards are weighted, and I will explain all that to you as well. But if you were looking at this, so this innovative thinking score of a 3 probably has several assignments that are in that score, but you only see that current score of a 3. I'll look at several different assignments where you showed innovative thinking, and that's where I feel like you are at this point in the semester. But like for this 3, 2, 3.5, 4, 2.53, if all of these were weighted 1, your grade right now would be a B. It would be a 3, and it would be an 85%. If these were weighted differently, then that would skew that. So to help you guys and myself along with this, every student is going to get a tracking sheet, and I'm going to have these tracking sheets as well. And this will be where we see those scores on individual assignments, and you can kind of look and see how I'm determining those current scores, and we can have lots of conversations about that, whether we agree or disagree with that. But like I said, sometimes it's a judgment call. And but I do try to work in favor of the student. So here will be where the assignments are listed. And then on the other side, you'll see all of the standards listed and those weights. And I'm writing those assignments in on top as they go, and students will do that as well. And you can see that for, close read, there's a 2 and a 3, and I have to try to determine a current score. I try not to determine a current score until there's 3 assignments, but sometimes that's impossible with the 6-week grades. So sometimes it is like looking at the 2. Maybe if I thought this Life of Pi reading was really indicative of things I was seeing in class, I could still give that student a 3. It just depends. But if I'm looking at, so for example, communication development of ideas, if this was the progression of scores, a 3, a 2.5, and then 2 3.5s, instead of averaging that current score for me, and especially I would look at what types of assignments these were. I would look at that religion narrative was a very significant assignment, bigger than perhaps my history writing. And so in that more significant assignment, that student was able to pull off a 3.5, and you've shown that twice there. I would probably give this current score a 3.5. And so again, not an average, but where I think that student is right now. It's not always that easy. It doesn't always show that progression, but I just try to take into account everything that I've seen. Silent mechanics here, again, like this one would be sort of a judgment call. If you had that my history writing, which is a shorter piece, and explorers project, which is a shorter piece, but then in this more significant piece, a student was able to prove a 3 there, like I might give that student a 3 for that current score instead of a 2.5, because that piece was weighted more heavily and you're further along and that you are showing some growth. So I think you might be progressing. So that's kind of how it works. And we just have a lot of communication there. Late work policies. So with SPG, late work does not have a grade penalty bonus on your end. I used to have like 10% off every day that a paper was late. I used to have 50% for all late homework. And you'd have students who could really do the work but would be failing the class or struggling with Ds. That does not happen anymore. However, there are suggested due dates for different assignments, because if you wait until the very end, you'll fall behind. It's overwhelming. You're not going to do well and you're not going to learn a lot. So all papers and major assignments must be completed by the semester due date given by me in order to pass the course. This is something that's very important. I don't have homework assignments that I grade. There's no fluff in there. And so there's just several papers and a few projects and then some assessments, but everything has to be complete. Every single one of those assignments in the grade book has to be complete by the semester due date in order to pass the course. The second thing is students not having work completed on the suggested due date will need to contact parents on their own and say, I didn't have this work even though it was done, and submit a plan for completion. Of course, a pink slip, and you can come in during academic lab. But again, students need to be sort of tracking this work and trying to keep up with those due dates. But if you miss it by a day or two or even a week, it's not penalized. Plagiarism policies are a little bit different with standards-based grading because it does not support giving zeros for plagiarism. Your grade is supposed to be reflective of your skill. So instead of this, if you do plagiarize, not only do you have to redo that assignment, but you have to complete an additional assignment of equal value in order to get a score for that assignment. And then there will be disciplinary consequences, of course, determined through the student's administrator. Sometimes that's a 3-hour detention. Sometimes that's an in-school suspension. So it just depends. Messages like don't copy. You don't need to. You can always redo and rework everything. So there's no need to do anything like that. Revisions and retakes, just what I was talking about. Students can revise any assignment, papers, and other standard skills up until the week before final exams for each semester, as many times as you want. Papers can be revised and submitted using the feedback from conferences, peer editing, teacher comments, anything. And then, when you're talking about other skills that aren't paper skills or writing skills, those can be redone by asking for a new assignment or making up a new assignment. Students can do that as well. I want to show you that I can do this. I want to show you I have innovative thinking. This is how it's going to come through. And so students have the opportunity to prove those skills in a variety of ways. Some things that might frustrate you at first. So this is the big one. Grades are usually lower at the beginning of the semester. There are a few grades in there. I don't have grades for a lot of the standards yet by the time that 6-week mark rolls around. And it's really hard to assess that, but a lot of times you're still like learning the skill and developing the skill and understanding where you need to be. And there's nothing to pad the grade, like no 10 out of 10 completion points for homework assignments. So they are lower, but don't panic. Remember, you can retake, revise anything you want. And those 6-week progress reports do not factor into your GPA. It does not matter. And so don't freak out and come have a discussion with me, but we can really work to get you where you want to be. So that's what I was talking about too. There's no fluff. Your grade is based on mastery of skill only. There are no homework participation points to pad the grade. So if some students struggle with like, I work really hard and I do my work, but it's about getting that skill up to that level and developing that skill. And so, again, not having that completion points, you really might have to work harder than you're used to in order to get the grade you want. But there is always that you are totally in control of getting that grade you want at any time. And then 3, without penalties for late work, you might get behind and then get overwhelmed. And so you really need to watch that, as some people try to take advantage of that and it does not work out well for them at all. But sometimes you need to, and that is a life skill too, like scheduling, managing, understanding, making up a plan when you do get behind. But then that no penalties for late work also works in your favor too, right? So final thoughts is this. I've been doing this system of grading for several years. I truly philosophically believe in it. It is a shift for a lot of people, and sometimes it's a struggle to kind of wrap your head around it. So I encourage you, if you do have questions, to come to me. Some people do get frustrated at first, but in the end, standards-based grading does present a lot more work on my end. And not saying that for any other reason, so that you understand that if I didn't really believe that it's what's best for kids, I would not be doing it. And so I think that you guys will find that you really can, if you want to, be very successful in this class always, and you can never give up. I do want my students to take a quiz found in the links in the comments, just to make sure you guys understand the basic principles and what my class is all about. And then anybody else, parents, whomever, I put some additional links in the comments so that you can see, if you want to watch some videos, where I get some of the research and ideas. I also use this book by Robert Marzano, and I'd be happy to have discussions with you about that as well. So thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to a great year.